My name is Will Miller, and I'm the president of the Wallace Foundation. I'd like to thank all of you for coming and acknowledge the broad range of people in the room today. We have state leaders and their staffs, staff from members of Congress, representatives of issue organizations, think tanks, and professional associations, school superintendents, and of course, principals. It's you who are the subject of what we're here to talk about today. Indeed, school principals have been a critical, if often overlooked, ingredient in education reform, but that is changing, as the attendance at this briefing demonstrates. There's growing recognition that principals should no longer mainly be thought of as managers of buildings and bus schedules. Indeed, effective leaders are their school's chief improvement officers, strengthening instruction, building a culture of high achievement, and supporting teachers and other educators to boost student performance. After 15 years of research and more than a decade of investment, we can confirm that there's an empirical link between principal leadership and improved student achievement. As a major report that our foundation commissioned from researchers at the universities of Toronto and Minnesota put it, there are virtually no documented cases of troubled schools being turned around without the intervention by a powerful leader. But to date, many states have been unsure about how they can best support the development of effective principals, usually leaving these matters to local school districts to sort out. Today, you'll hear about a new report that sheds light on ways states can take a more effective role in this area. It's called Developing Excellent School Principals to Advance Teaching and Learning, Considerations for State Policy. In a moment, you'll hear from its author, Dr. Paul Manna of the College of William & Mary. As you listen to his presentation and the discussion that follows, we encourage you to share your thoughts and continue the conversation on social media today by using the hashtag MannaBriefing, that's M-A-N-N-A briefing, one word. The first aspect of state policy that Dr. Manna addresses is the relatively limited attention that has been given to principals compared to other issues on crowded state education policy agendas. Manna uncovers some of the reasons for this and explains ways to address them. He then addresses a major knowledge gap in the area, the lack of a clear framework for state leaders to use as they think about their own contexts, and what kinds of actions they could consider to support and improve the effectiveness of principals. Manna's report provides just that kind of framework, a problem-solving tool for state leaders and others who want to make schools more successful. The breadth of Dr. Manna's analysis is directly related to how he conducted his research. He drew on an array of sources: interviews with officials like many of you here today, a wide-ranging survey of those inside and outside of government who work on school leadership issues, tracking of news coverage, and new analyses from federal surveys and other data sources. This led Dr. Manna to identify 6 policy levers and 4 contextual factors for states to consider as they seek to improve the quality and effectiveness of their school principals. He will describe them in his remarks. Another knowledge gap he addresses is that policy leaders don't always have a good sense of what actions other states are trying and how those efforts are going. The result of all this work is not just another piece of theory. Rather, it is grounded in real-world practice, buttressed with examples of steps that some states are taking to develop and support great principles. For example, it describes the path that Illinois and Kentucky took to require principal preparation programs to meet a new set of more rigorous and relevant expectations. It illustrates state efforts to help recruit and prepare the next generation of excellent principals, including Maryland's Promising Principals Academy, a year-long program for assistant principals, and North Carolina's Northeast Leadership Academy, which trains small cohorts of principals for rural school districts. For principals already on the job, the report highlights other approaches, including a statewide partnership in Pennsylvania that supports hundreds of novice principals. Dr. Manna's report, I believe, offers a practical guide for state leaders to use in crafting evidence-based policies around principal recruitment, preparation, and evaluation. And a copy can be found in your folders. Importantly, the report is also a resource for all of you precisely because of what it is not, a one-size-fits-all manual for principal policy. This approach aligns with how the Wallace Foundation approaches all of our work. We're a national foundation focused squarely on working with districts, states, and researchers to provide evidence to help decision makers like you who are tackling stubborn social problems. We understand the importance of adapting solutions to the local context. Justice Brandeis was right. States have always been the laboratories of our democracy. We have 50 opportunities to try policies in different contexts to see what works. It is also important to note that this report does not downplay the critical role of teachers. It is their work that has the greatest influence among school-based factors on student achievement. But it's precisely because principals in turn have such a strong impact on teachers that they are so important. For example, we know that the number one reason that teachers stay in or leave a school is the quality of the principal's leadership. As education scholar Linda Darling Hammond put it, it is the work principals do that enables teachers to be effective, as it is not just the traits that teachers bring, but their ability to use what they know in high-functioning organizations that produces success. The Manna Report arrives at a time when there are promising signs that policymakers at all levels are realizing that good teaching and good leadership go hand in hand. At the local level, just as business and the military invest heavily in leadership development, we are seeing more districts creating induction and mentorship programs to support principals and to help them improve, part of what we at Wallace call principal pipelines. At the adaptation of the Interstate School Leaders Licensure Consortium, or ISLIC, standards for education leaders, and their recent revision is one example of state leaders working to ensure that preparation programs, school districts, and state leaders are on the same page when it comes to what makes an effective principal. At the federal level, this administration has placed a new emphasis on principal quality and evaluation through the Race to the Top program and has sought to shift more federal funds towards supporting principals. As Congress considers the next version of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, it has a great opportunity to encourage states to consider the policy levers that Dr. Manna will discuss today. There's much more to be done. At a time when we have higher expectations of schools and students, the reasons for doing so are clear. Principals carry out a number of essential and highly complex instruction-related tasks like shaping a vision for success for all students and cultivating leaders in others, in addition to the traditional roles like overseeing budgets and building maintenance. States that find ways to recruit the best candidates to the principalship, support them effectively in this new role, and evaluate them fairly, all without adding more to their plates, are the ones that will be best positioned to close achievement gaps and ensure all children graduate from high school ready for success in school, career, and life. That's a goal that can transcend differences of opinion on either side of the aisle. Now I'd like to give you an idea of how the rest of the afternoon will unfold. In a few moments, Dr. Manna will walk us through his findings. We'll then be joined by Dr. Sonia Santelices, Vice President of K-12 Policy and Practice at the Education Trust. Dr. Santelices will moderate a panel discussion of the report's findings and what it will take to make principals a priority for policymakers. She and the panelists will then be joined by Dr. Manna to take your questions.